The lock clicked from the inside of my own penthouse door. Not the polite click. The final one. Then my husband's voice slid through the intercom. Calm. Practiced, cruel. You're not on the lease anymore, Avery. My name is Avery Whitman, and until 20 minutes ago, I thought my marriage was strained, but salvageable. I'm 32, a commercial real estate consultant who reads contracts for a living. Irony doesn't even begin to cover it. My husband, Grant, likes to call himself self-made. He also likes to forget who introduced him to his first investor. I stood barefoot in the hallway, a carry-on suitcase at my feet, my laptop bag cutting into my shoulder. Through the frosted glass, I could see shadows moving, boxes, arms, a woman's silhouette bending over my coffee table. Not my silhouette. Grant, I said into the intercom, keeping my voice steady. Open the door. This is ridiculous. I already talked to your father, he replied. So, don't start. My stomach dropped. You called my dad? Of course I did, Grant said lightly. Someone needs to take responsibility now that he's, what was the word? A pause. Bankrupt. The hallway felt suddenly too narrow. Too public. That's not true, I said. You know that. I know enough, he said. Emergency filing. Exclusive occupancy. You're off the title, Avery. Always were. My fingers went numb. I'd reviewed 100 deeds like ours. I trusted the man who signed ours beside me. My phone buzzed. Grant, tell your dad to take his burden back. I didn't cry. I called my father. He answered on the first ring. Avery. My voice cracked anyway. He locked me out. He filed. He called you. A pause, too calm to be comforting. Yes, Dad said. And I told him something. What? I whispered. I told him, Dad replied evenly, that I'd be there in 3 minutes. I looked at the elevator as it dinged open, and from the lobby below, I heard engines low, synchronized, unmistakable, rolling to a stop. People think pressure arrives loudly, sirens, shouting, slammed doors. They're wrong. Pressure creeps in quietly, the way Grant did after my father's name started appearing in the business pages with words like troubled and exposed. 6 months ago, our marriage still looked normal from the outside. Dinner reservations, charity galas, smiling photos. But inside our penthouse, the air had shifted. Grant stopped asking my opinion on deals, stopped looping me into conversations. When I corrected him, gently, he'd laugh and say, Relax, Avery. I've got this. That was new. He used to need me. My father, Richard Whitman, built his empire slow and private. No flashy interviews. No social media bravado. When the rumors hit that one of his holding companies was being restructured, Grant heard only one word: weak. And men like Grant don't stand beside weakness. They stand on it. He started keeping files locked. Passwords changed. His phone turned face down at night. When I asked what was going on, he kissed my forehead like I was a child and said, Stress. You wouldn't get it. Then came the dinner where he said casually, If your dad goes under, we need to protect my assets. My assets. Not ours. I reminded him, quietly, that half his early funding came from introductions my father made. Grant smiled, slow and thin. That was charity, he said. And charity expires. I should have seen it then. The legal consultations disguised as gym sessions. The way he asked offhand, whose name was technically on the penthouse title. The woman whose perfume started lingering in the elevator. Now I stood in the lobby, glass walls glowing gold around me, my suitcase still at my feet. Outside, a line of black Rolls-Royces idled at the curb like they were waiting for a signal. And I realized something chilling. Grant didn't lock me out because he was done with me. He locked me out because he thought my father was finished. The front doors began to open. The lobby doors slid open with a soft hydraulic sigh, and every conversation around me died. 4 men stepped in first, dark suits, identical posture, the kind of calm that comes from certainty, not intimidation. Then my father walked in behind them, unhurried, coat perfectly pressed, expression unreadable. He didn't look like a man who'd lost anything. He looked like a man arriving to collect. "Avery," he said like we were meeting for lunch. I exhaled for the first time in an hour. "Dad." He glanced at my suitcase, then up toward the private elevators that led to my penthouse. "So," he said mildly, "this is how Grant chose to announce himself." I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice. We rode the elevator in silence. The numbers climbed. With every floor, my pulse slowed, not because I felt safe, but because something else was settling in. Clarity. Cold and sharp. When the doors opened, the hallway smelled wrong. Not my candles. Not my diffuser. Someone else's vanilla sweet perfume sat heavy in the air. Dad noticed. Of course he did. The penthouse door opened from the inside before we could knock. Grant stood there, wine glass in hand, shirt sleeves rolled like he was hosting. Behind him, a woman perched on my sofa, bare legs tucked under her, wearing my cashmere throw like it belonged to her. Grant's smile faltered when he saw my father. "Richard," he said carefully, "I thought you'd be busy." Dad smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I rearranged my schedule. Grant straightened, recovering fast. "Look, Avery, this is uncomfortable but legal. You're not on the title. I sent the paperwork. We'll be generous." "Generous," my father repeated, tasting the word. Grant's jaw tightened. "You went bankrupt. Let's not pretend you have leverage." That was the moment I saw it, clear as glass. Grant wasn't brave. He wasn't cruel for fun. He was gambling. My father took one slow step forward. "Son," he said softly, "you should never confuse silence with weakness." The woman on my sofa shifted, suddenly uneasy. And Grant's phone buzzed in his hand. Grant glanced at his phone, frowned, then laughed like the sound itself could scare reality away. "Excuse me 1 second," he said, turning slightly. His thumb froze mid-scroll. I watched the color drain from his face. "What is it?" I asked, already knowing. He didn't answer me. He looked at my father instead. "This isn't funny," Grant said. "If this is some intimidation stunt." Dad didn't move. "Read it again." Grant's hand shook. Wine sloshed onto the marble floor, dark red spreading like a stain. The woman on my sofa stood up fast now, clutching the throw to her chest. "My accounts are temporarily restricted," Grant said. "That's impossible. I have automatic protections." "Yes," Dad said calmly. "You did. Through a holding bank I quietly acquired last quarter." The word acquired landed hard. Grant's voice rose. "You said you were bankrupt." Dad tilted his head. "No. The press said that. I let them." I felt something inside me crack. Not pain this time, but awe. "You moved assets," Grant whispered. "You hid them." "I consolidated them," Dad corrected. "And then I waited to see who would show their teeth." Grant looked at me then, really looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. "Avery, you knew?" I shook my head slowly. "I didn't. But you showed me who you were anyway." Outside the windows, I heard engines again, closer now. And my father spoke the words Grant would never forget. "Pack your things," Dad said. "This home was never yours." I didn't feel victorious right away. After Grant retreated into the bedroom, after the woman grabbed her purse and avoided my eyes, after the front door closed on their panic, I sat on the edge of my own sofa and finally let my hands shake. Not from fear, from the delayed impact of betrayal. Dad didn't rush me. He never does. He poured himself a glass of water, not wine, and waited like this was a business meeting that required silence before strategy. "I loved him," I said finally. Saying it out loud felt foolish and necessary at the same time. "I know," Dad replied. "That's why this hurts. And why it must be handled correctly." I looked around the penthouse, my penthouse. The art I chose. The layout I designed. The life Grant tried to evict me from with paperwork and arrogance. "I don't want him destroyed," I said slowly. "I want him exposed." Dad's mouth curved, not into a smile, but approval. "Good. Destruction is loud. Exposure is permanent." We talked then. not emotionally.
Precisely.
Grant's image, his investors, his carefully curated reputation as the man who rescued a woman from a fallen dynasty. Every lie rested on one assumption, that my father was finished, and I was powerless. We would not rush. We would not threaten. We would let Grant do what insecure men always do when they think they're cornered. Overplay their hand. Dad stood, buttoning his coat. "I'll handle the board," he said. "You handle Grant." I felt something settle into place inside me.
Calm, I said.
"Yes," Dad agreed. "Calm before execution." And upstairs, I heard Grant pacing, already unraveling, already planning his next mistake. Grant didn't sleep that night. I know because neither did I. From the guest room, I listened to the rhythm of his footsteps, fast, erratic, like a trapped animal wearing Italian loafers. Around 3 a.m., he knocked on my door, soft at first, then harder. "Avery," he said, "we need to talk." I waited long enough to remind him of the hallway. Then I opened the door. He looked wrecked, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, confidence leaking out of him in small, ugly ways. "I overreacted," he said quickly. "You know how much pressure I've been under." I nodded. "You filed for divorce under emergency motion." "Yes, but," he swallowed, "that can be revisited." I smiled, small and polite, the way men like Grant mistake for weakness. "Of course. After the board meeting tomorrow." His face twitched. "What board meeting?" "The one you weren't invited to," I said gently. "The one where your primary investors will be shown your real balance sheet. The one where they'll learn you leveraged shared assets without disclosure." Silence. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "I already did," I replied. "All I had to do was stop protecting you." Grant stepped back like I'd struck him. Downstairs, my phone buzzed. "Dad. Dad. They're asking questions." Grant's knees actually buckled. And for the first time since I married him, Grant understood something terrifying. This wasn't revenge fueled by anger. It was precision. The fallout wasn't loud. It was worse than that. By noon, Grant's phone wouldn't stop vibrating, but no one was calling him back. Investors texted once, formally, then went silent. His assistant emailed to say she'd been reassigned pending review. The board meeting ended early. That alone told me everything. Grant sat at the kitchen island, staring at nothing, his suit jacket still on like armor he forgot how to remove. "They froze my discretionary authority," he said hoarsely. "Just temporarily." I leaned against the counter, arms folded.
Calm.
Observing. "Temporary is how it starts." He looked up at me then, eyes wet, pride cracked open. "You set me up." I shook my head.
No.
"I stopped covering for you." He laughed, sharp, breaking. "Your father ruined me." "No," I corrected. "You ruined yourself the moment you decided I was expendable." He stood suddenly, desperate now. "I made a mistake. I panicked."
We can fix this.
"I can undo the filing."
You can try, I said.
"But filings leave trails. So do lies." Grant's shoulders sagged. The man who once lectured rooms full of executives about dominance and vision now looked small. "What do you want?" he asked. I met his eyes, without flinching. "The truth."
Publicly.
"And my name off everything you touched." Silence stretched. Then he nodded once. Outside, sirens wailed somewhere far away. Life moving on. Inside, Grant finally understood the cost of underestimating the woman he tried to discard. And I knew the ending was close. Grant held his press conference 2 days later. I didn't stand beside him. I watched from the back of the room, unnoticed, exactly where power prefers to sit. Cameras clicked as he cleared his throat, hands gripping the podium like it might disappear. "I misrepresented my financial position," he said, voice tight. "I failed to disclose conflicts of interest. And I leveraged assets that were not solely mine." Each sentence shaved something off him: status, certainty, the illusion of control. The headlines moved fast after that. Rising Star overplayed his hand. Board votes no confidence. Divorce filing withdrawn amid financial probe. Grant never looked at me. The divorce still happened. On my terms. Quiet.
Clean.
Final. 3 weeks later, I moved into a smaller place by the river. Sunlight, clean lines, no echoes of anyone else's ambition. I kept one thing from the penthouse, the mug that said "Make it bold." It felt earned now. Dad came by once, no convoy this time. Just him. "You okay?" he asked. I smiled. Really smiled. Better than okay. He nodded, satisfied. "People thought I went bankrupt," he said lightly. "Funny how quickly they showed themselves." "Funny," I agreed. "And useful." That night, I stood by my window watching the city breathe. Grant lost a penthouse, a reputation, and the comfort of believing he was untouchable. I lost a husband, but I gained something far more valuable.
Certainty.
Never confuse quiet women with powerless ones.